All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Growing Up Social webinar. Can I just have a show of hands for everyone that can hear me? You can just go to the little hand tool. Oh, great. We've got 2 and 3. And Alex, I'm just hoping that you can hear me, Alex. So my name is Alex. I am the program coordinator for Global Campus Connections, and I'm very excited to bring you Growing Up Social today. We've got our presenter. Her name is Arlene Pellicane. She is the author of 31 Days to Becoming a Happy Wife, 31 Days to a Happy Husband, as well as the book that she'll be talking about today, Growing Up Social. And if you stick with us until the end of the event today, we're going to be doing a little drawing for 2 free copies of her book. And Arlene currently lives in San Diego with her husband and her children, and she has appeared on the Today Show, and she really knows what she's talking about. We're very excited to hear what she has to say. So right now I'm going to switch you guys over to a video. It's going to be over on the web tour, and so just sit tight and enjoy the video, and then when we come back, Arlene will talk to us, okay?
Is technology bringing your family closer, or is it driving you apart? Do you stare at your phone, but not into your child's eyes? Do you ever wonder, are my children spending too much time with screens? Are you? The more a child is involved in screen time, the less time there is for interaction with parents, siblings, and friends.
Good night.
Good night. Could there be a better way? A digital road less traveled, where screen time is part of life, not most of life. Are your family moments enjoyed or missed? Don't let a screen take your place.
Good night.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Growing Up Social, Raising Relational Kids in a Screen-Driven World by Chapman and Arlene Pellicane.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? It's nice to meet you all. As you can tell from the video, that was myself and my family. I've got 3 kids. Ethan is 10, he's in 5th grade, and he was the voice in that voiceover. Noelle is a 3rd grader, and Lucy's our youngest. She's a kindergartner, she's 5. So whether you have kids or you don't have kids, you know that screens have made their way into the American family, and things are kind of different now. So I want to welcome Alex and Jessica, Rachel, and Shelly. And I know, Shelly, you might have missed it a little bit, and basically what we were seeing was a day with screens and a day without screens and the difference that that can make. And I think that video shows us in a very small capsule what can happen day after day after day. as we are on screens more, as the children in our lives are on screens more. And I think it's really great that you guys are here to kind of take a step back, ask yourself a question, and say, you know what, is technology working for my home? Is it helping us or is it hurting us? So we're going to go through some things today that I think will help you manage your screen time better in your home and also personally. Because if you look at normal sometimes is not working because you see teenagers and they're on their devices more than they're talking to you as parents. And you see kids younger and younger, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, you know, in the supermarket, and they're just looking at their devices all the time, and you wonder what is going on. So we want to talk a little bit and give you some statistics that are kind of alarming. As you can see here, the average American child age 8 to 18 spends more than 7 hours a day looking at a screen. So that could be television, video games, texting. A lot of it is schoolwork, and so if your child is already getting 1 to 2 hours a day when they're at school, and then they come home and they're watching more television as you're making dinner, as the evening's going on, sometimes we are not aware of how much our children are watching. 90% of parents allow their kids younger than 2 years old to watch electronic media. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time for babies to age 2. And yet 90% of us will do it because, one, advertising tells us if our kids are not, you know, watching TV, they're going to miss something. You know, if my baby isn't doing this particular app, they're not going to be able to multiply. You know, but the truth is that research tells us over and over again that a real live human being, and even though you and I are using technology right now, but we're real living human beings, that a real living human being in front of your child is always going to be a better teacher of language. So always keep that in mind. And then the bedroom, you know, and should a child have a TV in their bedroom? And of course there are many opinions about this, but 71% of kids age 8 to 18 do have a TV in their bedroom. 1 out of 3 kids by the time they're 3 years old will have a TV in their bedroom. And this is a huge caution for parents for a few reasons. One would be simply because of sleep, that you know that when you're watching a screen that you need some time before watching that screen and then all of a sudden falling asleep because your adrenaline's going, your mind is stimulated, your brain is stimulated. So both kids and adults, we need to turn off these screens an hour before we actually want to fall asleep. And you know as well as I do, there's no child that's going to say, oh look, it's 6:30, I should turn off my TV now because I'm about to go to bed. You know, kids cannot self-regulate that. So we as parents, we would be wise to keep those screens out of their room so that our kids can get better sleep. So keep that in mind as you're considering if you should do that. Now, as we talk about this, and in the book, Growing Up Social, my co-author, Dr. Gary Chapman, and I, we are not here to bash technology and say, you know, put everything away. But we are here to say, you know what, if we rely too heavily on technology, we're going to miss some emotional skills that our children need, and we call them 5 A+ skills. And you know about the A+ academic skills, but these are A+ skills that your child needs socially, emotionally, spiritually. And the first A+ skill we're going to touch on is affection. And this is about the ability to give and show affection. And, you know, as people are on technology more, they're seeing the research has been done, and they found that college students today, so you guys can think about this for yourself in the college campus, college students today are 40% less empathetic than college students of 20 years ago. And you kind of think about it, you know, we're so used to now looking at screens, and when we text someone, we don't see that on the other end they were disappointed or they were sad or they were angry. We just, you know, see the screen. And so we're not as used to reading faces. And then, you know, think about it, if I were to trip, it used to be that someone would be like, oh, are you okay? But now if I were to trip, no one would notice because everyone's looking down and no one really notices that I tripped. So affection, can we show and give and receive affection? It's all about eye contact, you know, and I know it's kind of weird because I'm staring at a computer right now and just trusting that you are seeing me looking at you, but you know in real life that when someone looks at you, it's much different than if someone's just looking down and you're having this conversation. It's totally different. And so affection is all about eye contact, and that's something that is being lost as kids are on screens more. So for ourselves, when our kids are talking to us, when adults are talking to us, remember, look away from your screen. Your screen doesn't see you, but the people that you're talking to, they see you. So when you're texting and your child comes up to you, show them affection by looking away from your screen, looking them in the eyes. What do you need? It's something so little, it doesn't take extra time, but it shows them that you have affection for them. And then it teaches them also the importance of eye contact. So remember that. And you know, for many kids, their love tank is filled by affection, words of affection, hugs and touches. And you know, truth be told, when our kids are playing video games, it's not like we're snuggled up next to them like, way to go, you know. We take that time when our kids are on screens as our time to get out of there and get stuff done. And so if your love tank of your child, even of yourself, if that affection is that physical touch, as Dr. Gary Chapman talks about in the love languages, that's really important to keep that in mind. Let's go to the next one. So, appreciation. You know that screens teach us all that what we want it instantly. You know, we go on Amazon and we get it and we want it right away and we don't want to wait. And what it tends to do is it makes us entitled, that we want things, we want them fast, and we want to be entertained. And so when kids have something like this, technology, they're used to gratification very quickly. You know, if you have to wait a few seconds before something comes online, you're like, what's taking so long? What's wrong with this thing? You know. And kids are learning this, that they need it instantly. But you and I know that life doesn't work that way, and that a child needs to learn how to appreciate what they have to become more patient. So for instance, when your child wants something, you know, Mom, they've got this latest game. Mom, they've got a phone. You know, they're in 4th grade. They've got a phone. I want one too. It's wise for us to say, you know what? I'm not going to buy that for you right away, because if I buy that for you this week, you're not going to appreciate it. But if I do it the old-fashioned way and I say, well, you know, Susie, if you really want that, it costs $200. And if you save $5 every month for a while, you might be able to buy that. And what does it teach that child? It teaches them to appreciate what they have, to take better care of it. And when they receive something, they realize and they say thank you instead of, I wanted another color and I can't believe you got this one, you know. So you know that when you're, you know, at the public school, we have this after-school club and we give out prizes and we give out snacks, and once in a while a kid will say thank you. But a lot of times a kid will say to me, Miss Arlene, I never win anything. You know, and that's what technology can breed, this, you know, I want, I need it now. And we're wise to say, you know what, we need to put a halt to that, and we need to help our children to say thank you for what they have and to appreciate the little things. The next one is anger management, because you know that we as adults, we have issues with anger, kids have issues with anger, but what we're seeing is that instead of learning how to face-to-face negotiate in a decent manner, you know, we can get online and just be bleh, just, you know, throw up all this stuff in a text, an email, and it's not appropriate if we're showing the world this anger when we really need to be doing it face-to-face with this one person we're upset with. And that's something that we've got to teach our children. I heard someone speak, he owns a bunch of Panera Breads here in San Diego, and he said that one thing he's seen, you know, obviously all of us have gone to the restaurants and we've seen these families, and instead of talking together, everyone's on their devices. One thing he has seen is that not only are they on their devices all the time, but when the kids get in a fight, because what siblings do not get in a fight at dinner time, when the kids get in a fight, it used to be that those kids would have to figure out how to work it out. You got the bigger piece. I'm going to sit here. I want to sit next to Mommy. And they had to figure that out. But now, he said, they don't figure it out. Mom just hands them one of these neat little jobbies. And instead, they start playing games. They whip out the tablet. And here are all these kids, and they are not learning how to manage their anger. Instead, they're being distracted. Let's put it off. You know, let's avoid this at all costs. And so what is that teaching our kids? It's not teaching them how to really deal with their anger, with their behavior, with their words. You know, that's what a kid has. So instead of having them like hit something, you know, we can say, hey, you know what, let's run around our house a few times until you cool down, and then let's talk about it. Instead of verbally going crazy, hey, you know what, we're going to count to 50. We're going to keep counting until you calm down, and then we're going to talk about this. So for us as parents, we rely a lot on screens to say, oh man, let's avoid this whole anger issue, and you know what, if you want to play an extra 2 hours, fine. I don't want to deal with your anger. But I just encourage you to say, you know what, wait a minute, I need to teach my child how to deal with anger, and so I will put away the devices and we're going to deal with this. And yes, Alex, it is a good point for adults too, because we can tend when we're upset with each other to say, oh, forget it, and just go in our own corners and get on our devices instead of saying, hey, this is something we need to work out. The next A+ skill is apology, and you know that there are times that you can text sorry, and it's okay, you know, like I forgot to feed the cat, sorry. But if it's like, hey, I just embarrassed you in front of a bunch of people, and I'm just going to text sorry, you know, that's not enough. So we need to teach our kids, teach ourselves how to apologize in real life, in real time, in a way that speaks to the other person and not just this little text and think it's okay. My co-author, Dr. Chapman, is this amazing psychologist, and he has also written a book about the 5 languages of apology. And I'm just going to go over them really briefly. It's expressing regret, so it's your child saying, I'm sorry. It's accepting responsibility. I broke your toy. It's making restitution. Would you like to play with my toy for a little bit? It's genuinely repenting. I will try not to break your toy again. And then it's requesting forgiveness. Will you forgive me for breaking your toy? So for kids, you know, when they're young, they can say, I'm sorry, I broke your toy, you know, and that's good. And then as they get older, they can go through those steps of saying they're sorry. And you can see as kids are on screens more and they're just like, sorry, you know, everything's truncated. And they're not really learning how to go through these steps that really will establish a good and solid relationship. Dr. Chapman talks about, you know, his little child knocking a glass over at the table, and accidents are always going to happen. But he said, oh no, it fell down, you know, and you know it didn't fall down, he knocked it over. And so he's got to teach his child to say, no, I accidentally knocked over that glass. And so for us as parents to realize, you know what, we have got to learn how to apologize. All right, so let's go to the next one. And it's true that a lot of adults, they use the texting because it's easier than getting face-to-face in front of someone and having these important conversations. The last A+ skill is attention, and boy, this is a big one. Ask you as a parent, trying to get your kids to pay attention to you, and then when they go to school, any teacher that's been teaching for a while will tell you that the student today is different than the student 10, 20 years ago, that it used to be, oh, okay, kids, get in a circle, and kids would get in a circle, and now it's, okay, kids, get in a circle, and it's like, okay, he's over here, and okay, we've got him sitting down, and now this one's flopping on the floor, and it's a lot harder to get people's attention. And you know what, you have to ask yourself, how does technology impact my child's attention span? Since the year 2000, since mobile, mobile phones and everything were big, our attention span as a nation has dropped 40% since the year 2000. So when we used to be able to pay attention for 12 whole seconds, now it's down to 8. So you guys out there are doing really, really great. So our kids are losing that ability to pay attention, and you know what? A lot of it is because, what is this? Instant. Remember when you had to go to the library and look at a little index card and look for the letter L for Lincoln, and then go over to the books and look for Lincoln and pull out the book and then actually read it? Okay, so that's the attention that used to be required of us, that we had to be focused, we had to be patient, things took a long time. You know, and for kids today, all they have to do is type L-I-N, you know, and it's like, oh, everything about Lincoln that you'd ever want to know just at a moment's notice. And many times they're not even doing it, we're doing it for them. So they're not learning how to pay attention because they're used to screen time. Screen time's immediate. You get what you need right when you need it. Your answer's right there. It's gratifying. It's exciting. You know, when they're playing a video game, they get to the next level. And so when it's required to be bored, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's when they're sitting in a car, you know, anything like that, all of a sudden kids can't be bored because we have a screen where? At home, in the van, at the restaurant, everywhere. And I tell you what, a kid who can be bored is a kid who's going to go really far in life because they have the self-control to master their boredom and sit through something. And you guys know how much that helps you in school. I remember when my son was in first grade and he was like, I am so bored, Mom, it's so boring. And I was like, what's boring? He's like, recess. We do the same thing over and over. And I'm like, oh, honey, if you're having trouble at recess, you're going to have a lot of trouble in college and at work. And it's really up to us as parents to teach our kids It's okay to be bored once in a while, and it's your responsibility to bring the action and really help our children to pay attention. So these 5 A+ skills, as you're thinking about screen time, the book will expand on it, on how you can help your child become more affectionate, more appreciative, able to manage their anger, able to apologize, and able to pay attention. Because you can imagine for Shelley with those 3 daughters, if those 3 girls can do those things, it's like, wow, my kids are doing a lot better than the average kid, and that's great. So let's talk about screen time in the brain, because people always want to know, well, what in the world is this doing to our brains and to our children's brains? And I know for us, right, as adults, can't you feel it that even now you're thinking like, okay, I need to do something else. I need to check my phone. I need to do my emails. Like, it's hard for us to be in one place at one time because we're so used to multitasking. And for children, it's the same way, that it's harder for them to focus on something, whether it's reading a book, because they need to be going to these different, exactly, we're expert multitaskers. And so what they've done, one of the arguments that you hear over and over for a kid, you know, and I'm talking about a preschooler, elementary school age student that's on technology a lot, they'll say, well, you don't want your child to be left behind in the 21st century. You know, you want to make sure that they're able to do these things, or else they're not going to be able to find a job later, and you hear these things. And so you're feeling like, oh, my child better get connected. You know, she better be blogging when she's in 1st grade because I don't want her to be left behind. Well, they did this study, and I think this is fantastic, where they took at UCLA, they took 12 people who did not ever use the internet, and then they took another 12 people, and they were expert users. They had them performing Google searches, and then they scanned their brains. And they found that the expert users, their brains looked a lot different than the non-users. The place where it was firing was the place where it was for quick decision making, visual acuity, so they had great periphery vision, and they could see, you know, they had to make quick decisions. Okay, should I do this? Oh, those shoes are on sale. Oh, I better register for this class. Look at that news headline. Oh, I've got to email my mother about this. So they're used to making quick decisions, and that's the part of their brain that was firing. Well, they had the novices just go online for 1 hour a day for 5 days in a row. That's all. 1 hour a day, 5 days in a row, and then they scanned their brains. And do you know, after only 5 hours of internet use, those novice users, their brains look just like the expert users. In just 5 hours, they had rewired their brains, which is amazing, because it tells you our brains are plastic, our brains are going to respond to what we are feeding our brains. It shows us that, wow, the part that's strengthened in the brain when we're online, those are those quick decision making. It's not the long-term memory. It's not, you know, the concentration, the focus. You're not necessarily going to have these deep thoughts, you know, all these amazing revelations, profound things coming when you're skimming and you're scanning. That's probably not going to happen. And so to realize for kids, when they are online a lot, they're feeding that part of their brain that's just quick decision making, but they're not doing that really reflective, thoughtful, you know, that's going to be necessary for deeper work in their life in the future. So my son Ethan, you saw him in the video, and he's in 5th grade, and he is strange, weird, crazy, because my son doesn't play video games, you know, so we do other things, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is how I see it. Sometimes I wonder, like, oh, what if my child, you know, feels so left out, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know, if my son went to someone's house and spent 5 hours with video games, I'm pretty sure he could learn it. Because what that study tells me is that in just 5 hours, those novice users caught up to the experts. Technology, my dear friend, is really easy to learn. You can get it. But can I take a 10-year-old that has played video games all their life, and can I give him a big, thick book that's, you know, appropriate for kids, but a big book? Can I give him that book and say, hey, you've got 5 hours, start reading? You know, most likely by 3-4 minutes, he's going to be like, there are no pictures in this, and I'm done, and let's go play games. You know, the brain is, it's much easier to teach a brain technology later on than to say, okay, wow, you've been raised on technology, you've been raised on immediate, you've been raised on exciting, and guess what? Now we're going to try to focus your attention. You're going to have to be bored. You're going to have grit. You're going to have to get through your papers. You're going to have to read these textbooks, and that's much harder to learn. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how is this impacting my child's brain. Let's continue with this. Nicholas Carr, he's an author of The Shallows, and here's what he says about going online. When we go online, We enter an environment that promotes cursory reading, hurried and distracted thinking, and superficial learning. It's possible to think deeply while surfing the net, just as it's possible to think shallowly while reading a book, but that's not the type of thinking the technology encourages and rewards. So, you know, the more you can get your child into an environment that's for learning, the better. Because typically when screens are happening, TV's on in the background, you know, their computer's on and they're checking things in the background, it's harder to have that focused attention. Not only does it affect your brain in terms of, let's say, academics and intellectually, but emotionally, because when a child like this is on the computer a lot, what's happening? They're not spending as much time face-to-face with people. And that's where that lack of empathy comes in that we were talking about. And this is a concern because, you know, I think about there's not a lot of neighborhoods that can say this, but my cousin lives in this neighborhood, a cul-de-sac, where all the kids go and they ride bikes and they ride scooters, and one Christmas, one of the girls got a tablet. And ever since she got the tablet, she never goes out to play anymore. She plays video games all day, and her mom is just like, she's addicted, I don't know what to do, she just plays video games. Well, what is that girl missing out on? She's missing out on face-to-face time with other kids in the neighborhood. She's missing out on working as a team, getting your feelings hurt sometimes, all those things that are part of growing up. And screen time can make our people skills atrophy. The more we're on screens, the less we're with people. And so keep that in mind with ourselves and with the children in our lives, that we need people time face-to-face. Dr. Gary Small says this: the pathways for human interaction and communication weaken as customary one-on-one people skills atrophy. And I tell you what, the kid that can look an adult in the eye and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, it's nice to meet you, what do you do for a living? You know, if you have like an 8, 9, 10-year-old that can do that, you know, the parents or the other people are going to be like, what in the world did you do to this child? And yet that's a very customary thing that used to be so common, but kids aren't doing that now because we're not having the strengthening of people skills. Instead, our kids are really great gamers, or they're really great at things online, but they're not as good at things face-to-face. So I think it's really important that we as parents be thinking about what kind of common courtesy skills can we practice, so that when we know we're going to a party, and you can tell your kids, hey, when we go to the party, I want you to look at the host and shake their hand and say thank you for having us. And you can do this, and your kid could be 3, and you could just try this and be really cute. And you practice that at home, and then when you get to the party, you do that. And my middle child was, my oldest is more gregarious that way, but my middle was more reserved. And one thing that helped her was to let her know this isn't about you. This is about making the other person feel important, and this is about making the other person feel good. So even if you feel like, oh, my child's kind of reserved, they're kind of shy, that'd be hard for them, teaching them that social skill of caring about the other person, technology doesn't teach us that, and we don't learn that automatically. So that's something that we've got to learn. All right, so let's take a look. I want to go through these 5 love languages really quickly, and then I also want to say the 18-month-old with the phone, like, the phone. And you know what? You can choose when you want to give this phone over to your children. For myself, when I got the phone, I told my kids this is a no touch, because I didn't want to have to wrangle and wrestle with them every time I needed to use the phone. And you think about it, it's an expensive toy. We don't necessarily expect a little kid to be able to not lose it. You know, your kid might drop it in the supermarket, and it's kind of not their fault. So just keep in mind, high ticket item, small child, you might want to play with swapping that out a little bit, because I know phone. Okay, screen time and the love languages. So great, they apparently had some kind of webinar in November, so it's perfect. So if you're not familiar with the love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman, they are really wonderful at unlocking your relationships, with your loved ones, with your children, with your coworkers. And they're simply this: love language, it's how you give and receive love. The first one's physical touch, so you feel love when you're hugged and you're held. Second one is words of affirmation, and you feel love when they say, wow, you did an amazing job with baking this. How in the world did you know how to bake this? And you just love those words of affirmation. Quality time, you want to be together. My middle child's that way. If we're running errands, she's the one who wants to be with us because she wants that quality time with us. Gifts, You love to give gifts. You love to receive gifts. It's all about the wrapping and the presentation, and then acts of service that you want to do things for people. And screen time impacts all of these love languages. When your love language is physical touch, and you used to read books with your children at night, but all of a sudden you're not reading books anymore, and everyone's just kind of on their screens, and everyone goes to bed, then there's this huge gap of, wow, that love language is not being spoken. Words of affirmation, what happens? We're on screens at mealtime. We're texting, the TV's on in the background, we're watching a movie, and all of a sudden we're not talking anymore. So I really encourage you, meal times, take your meal times back, one meal time at a time, to say no screens. Sometimes it's as hard as for us as adults, but no screens during mealtime, and use that time to really talk your words of affirmation, kid, and people around the table really appreciate that. Quality time. So you know that time, imagine if you traded the time you spend on social media, on watching television, if you traded that time for real quality time with your loved ones. Wow, what kind of impact would that make in your relationship? Gifts. These can be gifts, but you know what? They're awfully expensive gifts, so get simpler and give simpler gifts to your children. And then acts of service. You might be able to fix someone's phone, or that could be an act of service, and it has something to do with technology, but typically the acts of service don't necessarily have anything to do with technology. So it's good to think about the love tank of your children, the love tank of you, of your spouse if you're married, the loved ones in your life, your best friends, your parents, and think of how am I filling their love tanks, and if I'm on screens all the time, if they're on screens all the time, how in the world are we connecting? So at this time we're going to take a little jog, and I'm going to show you a clip that we did recently this fall at Fox and Friends, where they asked questions about technology, and I think this might answer some of the questions that are still in the back of your mind, and then we'll take time also. Feel free to type out questions in the chat and we can address those as well. So Alex, if we can show that clip from Fox and Friends. Okay, thank you guys. I know some of you had a hard time, but you've got that link to look at. And one of the questions was, how do you evaluate what your kid is watching? And so that ABC, I just put that in the chat room, that's a good way, easy way to remember. A, what's my kid's attitude like when this thing is over? B, what kind of behavior does this encourage in my child? And C, what kind of character am I seeing my child have as a result of the screen time? And again, those ABCs are really good for us as parents as well. And I think what you'll see as you read this book, Growing Up Social, Raising Relational Kids in a Screen-Driven World, that a lot of it is about us, that if the children in our lives grew up and they became like us in the way we use our digital devices, would we be happy? And many times the change starts with us, with setting limits, with being more intentional about actually giving our child eye contact, giving the adults in our lives eye contact. I know my husband has been out to lunch with friends and has just sat across the table as the friend continued to text and talk on the phone, and just thought, like, why in the world are we even having lunch together? So don't be that person. I want to leave you guys, it is the worst actually, I want to leave you guys just with this encouragement that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time for babies to 2, and then they recommend 2 hours or less for children age 2 to 18. And you're going to fall somewhere. Some people are going to say, like we talked about at Fox and Friends, that's way too much. Some are going to say that's way too little. But wherever you're at, set goals in your family of where do you want to be, and then make small incremental changes. If your kids are on computers 5 hours a day, do not leave this webinar and say we're going to 0, because after 2 days you'll hate it and it'll be over. But instead say, you know what, we're going to 4.5 hours, baby, and that's what we're going to do. And you make small incremental changes that you can hold on to that will last. There's so much more in the book that will give you some practical guidelines of what to do next, including introducing a digital Sabbath or some kind of digital free zone. So I really encourage you to look at that. I'm going to type my website here in the chat box, and you can stay in touch with me through my blog, and I've got a monthly email newsletter about having a happy home that you guys can look at. So I would be more than happy to stay in touch with all of you, and I'm so grateful for the chance to be able to talk with you. This has been so much fun. And I just want to leave with this question: is technology bringing your family together, or is it driving it apart? You know, you want to be that family that gets that big screen TV because you're going to pop popcorn and you're going to watch the same movies and you're going to cry at the same triumphs. You're going to watch the games together. But in reality, sometimes it's one person watching that and one person's on their tablet, another person's in their room. And so really say to yourself, wow, there's got to be times in our life where our technology's off and we're going to be closer together. And sometimes that makes you weird. Sometimes it makes your kids a little bit weird because their friends are doing things different. But just like in every generation, you kind of have to pave your own way, even if it's not the popular thing to do. So, okay, let's see. How do I make the change of not letting my baby use his phone since he's so young? I probably do. It's totally true. So do the change now, because when your child is older, it's just going to get harder and harder. So Dr. Chapman likes to say, and I love this too, whether it's a toddler or a teenager, that you start with the apology. Let's say you've let your teenager go crazy and all of a sudden you realize, you don't say, you're horrible, you're always on the TV, you're always on the computer. Instead you say, you know what, I'm really sorry, I've made a mistake. So with your little one, you know, your baby, you can say, Mommy made a big mistake. Mommy made a big boo-boo. Mommy didn't realize that this phone is very expensive and that you can suck on it and drool on it and delete things and drop it. So Mommy was wrong and Mommy's very sorry. And see, that teaches you to apologize and them to apologize too. So from now on, this is a no touch. And then the main thing you've got to do as you set these new rules is you've just got to stick with them, even when it hurts, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's harder for you than it is for your children. You've got to stick with them, be consistent, and in time it will really pay off. And good for you about the date night being phone free. And for teens, not necessarily on my site, but you know Dr. Gary Chapman has the book, The 5 Love Languages of Teenagers. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend that. And then the book, Growing Up Social, for you to read that for your teenager is still really good. Because even though the implementation is different, because with a toddler, elementary school, you can put in those big guidelines, but with your teen, they're very much already plugged in. And so that's just kind of trying to make spaces and saying, you know what, I'm going to take you out to ice cream. And we're not going to take any phones. I'm not going to take my phone, and you're not going to take your phone. I dare you. Let's do it. You know, so there are things you can do with your teens, but they're just not quite the same as when they're younger. Yeah, totally plugged in. Well, it has been a joy to be with you. I'm going to hand it over to Alex. Thank you so much for showing up. You guys are awesome. Have an amazing Christmas, and God bless your families. No app can take your place as a parent. You be there, because when your kids are young, they want to interact with you. So don't let that time be wasted because you're online or they're online. No app can take your place.
All right. Thank you so much, Arlene, for being here with us and for sharing all of your wonderful insight. I think everybody took a little something away from this webinar, and I know I certainly learned a lot that I will take home and use in my life. So for now, we just want to thank all of our attendees. If you get a moment, please take some time to fill out the survey that you see on your screen. It helps us at Global Connections to improve our programming in the future. And if you're interested in any of our other upcoming events, we've got a list of them at connections.wsu.edu. And now, for the big moment, we're going to draw for a copy of Arlene's book. We've got 2 people that we're going to draw. So the first one is Shelley. Yay, Shelley. Congratulations. And let's see, and Jessica. So you two, Shelley and Jessica, will be receiving free copies of Growing Up Social, Raising Relational Kids in a Screen-Driven World. And if you two could just email global.connections@wsu.edu, email us your contact info and your mailing address and your WSU ID number, and we will get that to Arlene, and she will send you copies of the book. And if you're in Canada, that's perfectly fine, no problem. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.